It gives me the greatest pleasure to welcome the distinguished delegates to this important conference on democracy and law. Now, challenges to democracy and law occur in a variety of ways, and down the centuries, the lawyers of different civilizations have addressed the question of challenges to their legal systems. But the challenge we face today is a much greater challenge. That is a challenge to the entirety of civilized organization, to the entirety of the administration of justice. And that challenge comes from the latitude we have given to those who keep manufacturing and storing and testing and deploying nuclear weapons. Now, nuclear weapons are the greatest of all dangers to law and to democracy. Somehow they have not received adequate attention from legal professions across the world who have concerned themselves with the smaller challenges. But if by any chance there should be an outbreak of war from any time from now onwards, the chances are that it will be a war that could attract the use of nuclear weapons. Once nuclear weapons are brought into the conflict, the matter will not end with the explosion of one nuclear weapon. Because unlike Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there will not be a sitting target which just receives the bomb and cannot retaliate. If the bomb is used again, there is bound to be retaliation. Nuclear weapons will be flying in both directions. There will be a nuclear winter, according to the scientific experts. And as a result of that, all civilization will be blotted out. We will be reduced to worse than the law of the jungle. The few, unfortunate enough to survive, will be scrambling for roots in the ground just to see what could keep them alive. And all the paraphernalia, all the structures of civilization would have been destroyed for good. Now, that is the greatest danger to democracy and law that exists in the world today. And I do feel that legal professions across the world have not given this problem sufficient attention. And that is why I welcome this great conference at which the International Association of Lawyers Against Nuclear Arms is addressing the question of dangers and threats to democracy and law, of which, as I just said, the greatest is the nuclear weapon. So what we have to do is to combine our efforts, combine the efforts of civil society, combine the efforts of academics, combine the efforts of scholars all over the world to try to keep this nuclear weapon in its proper place, which is to consign it to oblivion. Now that is what we have been trying to do. And I was fortunate to be a member of the International Court when this question was referred to us by the General Assembly. And we had to consider whether the nuclear weapon was legal. Of course, there were some differences of opinion among the members of the court, but what is important is this, that every single member of the court agreed that there was a duty lying upon the nuclear powers to take steps in good faith to reduce their arsenals with a view to the elimination of the nuclear weapon. Now that is the most important thing we should be about as far as the international scene is concerned. And strangely, that is not receiving adequate attention. There are valiant efforts made in this direction, like the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, Review Conference and so on. But what we have got to do is to get the lawyers, the judges and the decision makers across the world to realize that the continuance of the weapon is an absolute travesty of all the principles of international law. It is a crime against humanity, and it reduces almost to nothingness the cruelty of rulers of the past. We have very often derided rulers of the past like Genghis Khan, who have said that they would not leave a single man, woman or child alive in any village that dared to defy them. But the nuclear weapon is far more savage than that. And we exceed in our cruelty 1,000 times over the cruelty of Genghis Khan if in the so-called civilized day and age we permit the existence of the nuclear weapon. I put it as high as that. The very existence of the nuclear weapon is anathema to the rule of law. And it is the duty of each and every one of us here to alert the members of the public, the members of the legal profession, the members of all the political establishments of the world, to the fact that the continuance of these weapons is not merely a danger to the rule of law and a danger to democracy, but an absolute violation of the most fundamental principles of humanitarian law, and is indeed, most positively, a crime against humanity. So those are some perspectives I would like to leave before you as you commence your conference. And some of the principal dangers we face today are dangers from the military establishment. President Eisenhower, in his famous farewell address to the American people, warned them of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. And he said that this complex was growing so powerful that it was penetrating into every nook and cranny of our lives, whether it was in the assembly rooms or in the council chambers or wherever. The power of the military-industrial complex was making itself felt. And we have to remember that the arms industry is big business. It is probably the biggest business in the world today. And there are lots of people who have a stake in keeping the arms industry alive, keeping nuclear weapons alive, keeping the threat of nuclear war alive. All this has got to stop. And it can only stop if we spread the message that this is an absolute travesty of justice and a crime against humanity. So likewise, there is also the power of the corporate establishment. And I like to recall in this context some words of one of the most famous presidents of America, words which are not often remembered. Here is what Abraham Lincoln said in his farewell address. I see in the near future a crisis approaching that unnerves me and causes me to tremble for the safety of my country. Corporations have been enthroned, and an era of corruption in high places will follow, and the money power of the country will endeavor to prolong its regime by working upon the prejudices of the people until all wealth is aggregated in a few hands and the republic is destroyed. Such was the fear that even Abraham Lincoln felt when he saw the growing power of money, the growing power of the corporate world. And of course, the nuclear weapon is a great tool and a great, shall we say, a great weapon of the corporate world, something they like very much to keep alive because it keeps them in business and keeps them in profit. So all this is very important. We have got to do all we can. And remember that President Eisenhower, probably the president who knew most about war, had said this, that he feared very much for the future if we did not put an end to war. He said a couple of things that are very important, but I would like just to refer to this, that disarmament with mutual honor and confidence is a continuing imperative. Together we must learn how to compose differences, not with arms but with intellect and decent purpose. Because the need is so sharp and apparent, I confess that I lay down my official responsibilities in this field with a definite sense of disappointment. As one who has witnessed the horror and the lingering sadness of war, as one who knows that another war could utterly destroy this civilization, which has been so slowly and painfully built over thousands of years, I wish I could say tonight that a lasting peace is in sight. Those were the words of Eisenhower, and he knew more about war than most other presidents anywhere in the world. Let us take heed of these warnings. Let us take heed of the absolute necessity to preserve a decent future for our children and grandchildren, to preserve the environment which we inherited in pristine condition, but which we are leaving in a polluted state to our descendants. All those responsibilities lie upon us, and the principal means of discharging them is to get rid of nuclear weapons. So let us pray for the time when the world can say goodbye to the nuclear weapon once and for all. Thank you.